Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I would like to discuss why I believe SPX6900 is going to be the next GameStop. Everything in this video and on this channel is not financial advice and is purely intended for educational purposes. I'm not going to go into too much detail about GameStop and how the GameStop squeeze happened, but I would like to point out some critical details. GameStop, also known as GME, was a stock that famously went up from $3 to over $350 between 2020 and 2021 in the span of several months. By late 2020, 140% of GameStop's public float has been sold short. Observers and users around the Wall Street Bets subreddit strongly believed that the stock was undervalued. Users of the subreddit gradually coordinated together by exchanging information, trades, and memes related to the GameStop stock. This has eventually caused the price of GME to skyrocket from $17 on January 1st, 2021 to over $500 by January 28th, 2021, all in the span of less than 1 month. However, on January 28th, multiple brokerages have halted the ability to buy the GameStop stock. I would like to discuss what the GameStop movement symbolized. GameStop was not fundamentally about cash flows or revenues. It marked a very rare occasion where the small guys, by coming together, won a game that is systemically rigged in favor of the larger players. It was, first and foremost, a metaphysical and socio-financial byproduct of the frustrations and anxieties of the bottom 95% of the population. So why do I believe that a GameStop-like event will repeat itself? Because all those same frustrations and anxieties that have caused the GameStop movement to happen are still present in the hearts, minds, and souls of the population in arguably even stronger ways. Let us compare the state of affairs and the status quo between late 2020 and late 2025. First of all, the money supply is even bigger than it was in 2020-2021. Everything everywhere is much more expensive compared to 5 years ago. The gap between housing prices and incomes have widened even more compared to 2020. People are reporting much higher rates of loneliness compared to 2020. People are also reporting much worse mental health compared to 2020. The gap between the stock market and the real economy is wider than ever. Wealth and income inequality is also wider than in 2020. 65% of Gen Z aged between 18 and 29 say that they are actively avoiding traditional dating due to career and self-improvement priorities. This number is also up from 48% in 2020. And crucially, all of this is happening before AI and robotics have even begun to mass replace jobs. So will another GameStop-like event happen? I strongly believe that the answer to that question is yes. And I believe that SPX6900 is GameStop on steroids. What BTC is doing to gold, SPX6900 is doing to GameStop. In other words, it's a vehicle which is a 10x improvement. For those of you in the crypto space, or those of you that have been in Bitcoin for many years, I'm sure many of you have seen the following table. A table which clearly shows the superiority of Bitcoin over fiat and gold. Whether it's superior portability, superior divisibility, higher scarcity, or more decentralization, it is abundantly clear that Bitcoin represents the same ideas as gold, but taken to their logical extreme. I believe SPX6900 is doing something to GME, or more precisely, what GME stood for. Let's dive deeper into all the ways in which SPX6900 is superior to GME. First and foremost, and arguably the most important, is that SPX6900 is structurally decentralized. Crucially, all of GME trading is taking place on centralized equity trading platforms. On the other hand, much of SPX6900 trading is taking place on decentralized blockchains. At a high level, trades of GME and other stocks like it are settled on the New York Stock Exchange. And you need one of the Western stock brokerage accounts in order to participate in something like it. On the other hand, SPX6900 is a hybrid model where roughly half of the trading is taking place on decentralized blockchains, while the other half is taking place on various centralized crypto exchanges. Importantly, nobody can stop stop the trading of cryptocurrencies in its entirety. You can trade SPX6900 on Ethereum. You can trade SPX6900 on Solana. You can trade SPX6900 on Sui, BNB, as well as Base. You can access this trading through a variety of DeFi dApps such as Uniswap, Radium, Meteora, Aerodrome, and many others. Alternatively, for people that are less crypto savvy, they can also buy, hold, sell, and trade their SPX6900 tokens on centralized exchanges such as Coinbase, Bybit, and many others. What's very important to understand is that the equities market structure, clearing structure, and settlement structure is very complex, very opaque, and most importantly, has a number of centralized choke points. Whether it is multiple brokers, multiple clearing houses, multiple depository institutions, multiple banks, multiple transfer agents, multiple custodians, and multiple centralized exchanges, not to mention the centralized nature of the corporation itself, there are many centralized choke points in this system. If any of these stakeholders stop functioning, the entire trading microstructure is at the risk of halting. The next GME will not rely on traditional clearing, settlement, trading, and exchange infrastructure. Therefore, in my opinion, the next GME is unlikely to be a stock. I believe that the next GME is going to be a decentralized crypto asset trading on decentralized blockchains. The key insight here is that the rails on which equities trade are extremely centralized, while the rails on which crypto assets trade are quite decentralized. What's also quite interesting is that any equity or any company, including but not limited to GameStop, can issue more shares and effectively dilute you as an investor. On the other hand, SPX6900 has all of its rules fully fixed and fully frozen based on the rules of smart contract code. So creation of more coins is impossible. Additionally, TradFi stocks are ran by a board of directors and by management teams, both of which are extremely centralized. On the other hand, a crypto movement such as SPX6900 is a pure swarm with no leaders. There's no board of directors, there's no CEO. The system is far more decentralized than any company, equity, or corporation. The ultimate goal here is to be like a murmuration of birds, extremely decentralized, distributed, robust, and anti-fragile. Additionally, and not legal advice, of course, but another headline that I've read a few months ago is that the American regulatory bodies do not consider meme coins as securities. On the other hand, stocks are obviously securities. The other limitation of tying up a social movement to an equity or a stock is that you need a Western brokerage account in order to access it. On the other hand, when it comes to crypto, all you need is a wallet, which anybody can install on their laptop or their smartphone. Additionally, the GameStop movement was predominantly focused on American retail investors. A crypto asset, on the other hand, can get buyers, believers, and supporters from anywhere on the planet. Ultimately, the short to medium term goal of GME was to squeeze 2 or 3 hedge funds that were short GME, a goal in which they have succeeded. However, I would argue that the ambitions and the goals of SPX6900 are much bigger, given that the core goal is to flip the entire stock market. Last but not least, GameStop is something that has arguably already happened. On the other hand, I believe that the giant SPX6900 parabolas are yet to come. I believe SPX6900 represents the manifestation of the collective unconscious to create an ultra GME that is even more robust, anti-fragile, unstoppable, and more powerful than its predecessor. What do people already know about these markets? Meme coins can go from 100 million to 50 billion plus in the span of just a few weeks. Meme stocks can also go from $3 to $500 plus in the span of several months. People can come together to build large and powerful assets. And that social media is now playing a large and growing role in financial markets. I believe that another GME-like event where retail investors congregate around a single asset to make it a massive and outside success is very much likely to repeat again. I believe that the next GME-like phenomenon is not going to be a stock, but a crypto. I also believe that the next GME-like phenomenon is not going to be a utility crypto, but rather a mimetic crypto asset. Due to its relative outperformance, GME-like anti-establishment culture, deep lore, and an insane community, SPX6900 is by far the strongest candidate in the entire crypto universe to become that next GME-like massive cultural phenomenon and potentially something even bigger. Stop trading and believe in something.